Hello everyone, this is Ether Dragon, and welcome back to another episode of Fire Emblem Heroes. In this episode of the Damage Calc series, we'll be taking a look at some skills in the game that can boost a unit's attack during combat, and then later we'll take a look at adaptive damage and some skills that counter adaptive damage, and then we'll round things out with the staff class modifier. So without further ado, let's get straight into it with blade tomes. So these tomes have been around since the beginning of the game, and well, they're still pretty good to this day. So their descriptions were recently updated, so now it's quite a bit more clear as to what they do. And so in short, they give a bonus to the unit's attack equal to the amount of field buffs on that unit. Okay. And when I say field buffs, all you need to know is that I'm referring to the blue numbers that show up in the interface. So that's the easiest way to tell. So if we use Legendary Azura here to give Nino plus 6 to all of her stats, you'll see that now, even though it says she has 61 attack, because of her blade tome here, because she has 24 total points of field buffs, she actually has an extra 24 attack. So overall, she has 85 attack right now, which is pretty strong. Okay. And then there's the I guess you could call it the opposite of blade tomes, but we have skills like the Cleaner Plus here, where the unit gets a bonus to their attack based off of the total field buffs on the foe. So here, Legault has 53 base attack here. And so if you were to face Nino right now, who has 24 points of field buffs right now, he would get an extra 24 attack against her during combat, which also is pretty strong, but of course it's dependent on the enemy having field buffs, so it's kind of a situational weapon. And on a similar theme, we have Gunthra, who has her special unique tome. That was kind of redundant, but Blizzard has an effect where she gets attack based off of penalties on the foe. So penalties, we won't go too in-depth into it, but it's basically the red numbers in the interface. So this air here has 2 debuffs, minus 6 attack and speed. And so overall, she has 12 points of debuffs on her. So Gunthra would get an extra 12 attack against air during combat, otherwise known as 64 in this instance. And I just also wanted to mention there's stuff like Panic Ploy here on Ep.5 that can convert bonuses to penalties, and these are also counted as debuffs. So if you take a look at Legendary Azura here, she has a minus 6 buff to her speed and resistance. These are still penalties, so Gunthra again would get a bonus 12 attack during combat against this Legendary Azura. So I figured I would bring that up even though the descriptions were recently updated. I just wanted to clarify that for the people who still weren't quite sure about what the deal with these kind of weapons was. And of course, I didn't explicitly mention it, but these boosts to attack are still affected by the weapon triangle, so things like Triangle Adept and whatnot still affect the attack you get from stuff like blade tomes. So now let's quickly go into adaptive damage. And so we call it this type of damage adaptive damage because, as the effect states, here, let me quickly pull it up. So in this case, for dragons, they have usually this effect where if foe's range equals 2, calculates damage using the lower of foe's defense or resistance. So, if we take this air here, she has 22 defense and 38 res. So a dragon, normally, with this adaptive damage effect, when they attack into her, you would use air's defense stat to compute the damage rather than her res stat because it's lower. So against the Sothis here with 50 attack, you might think, so 50 minus 22 is going to be 28 base damage, right? And well, if we use the interface, we'll see here that Sothis is only doing 12 base damage. The rest of the damage you see is due to Sothis' special. But the reason for this is air's B skill, Mystic Boost. And as it says, it disables foe skills that in our syntax that gives them adaptive damage and calculates damage from staff like other weapons, which we'll refer to as Wrathful Staff. You'll see why in a bit. But so because air has Mystic Boost, you actually compute the damage done to air by dragons using her res stat. So since she has 38 res and Sothis has 50 attack, Sothis only does 12 damage. As well, 50 minus 38 is 12. So I figured I would mention that briefly. And so now we'll quickly move on to the staff class modifier. So all healers in the game, I will be using healers interchangeably with staff units throughout the series, but they're as healers, they do half as much damage as a normal unit would. So here as an example, we have Azuma, however you want to say his name, with 36 attack. So against Snowy here with 34 resistance, you might expect that he would do 2 damage, but because of the staff class modifier, he does half that, so only 1 damage. And for just as a foreshadowing for later in the series about rounding and shenanigans, against this 35 resistance FE, that 1 base damage you will have that, so 0.5, and it turns out that in the game you'll basically truncate, aka chop off the decimal point, so he actually does 0 damage to FE, even though he has 1 more attack than her resistance. But for healers, there's a way to deal with this, and that is through the skill Wrathful Staff. And so this just removes that penalty. So Jenny here with 48 attack. If we quickly, for simpler math, skip to an odd turn here to get odd attack wave up. Jenny now has 54 attack. So against Snowy, you'd expect her to do 20 damage now because of Wrathful Staff, and as you can see, that is the case. So Wrathful Staff can be built into weapons, like Loki here with Thok has Wrathful Staff built in, but of course skills like Mystic Boost on air disable those skills, so that's something to keep in mind when you're dealing with skill interactions. That's something to keep an eye out for. And there's some other skills in the game that have effects similar to Mystic Boost, but it's important to read the skill descriptions because some of them do not nullify both adaptive damage and Wrathful Staff. Sometimes they only nullify one of them or disable, so that's something important to consider. But that's going to be it for this episode. In the next episode, we'll finally be getting into specials, and in particular, next episode, we'll be talking about boosted damage specials. So stuff like Bonfire, Iceberg, and whatnot, we'll be covering how those specials are calculated in the game. But until then, thanks for watching. As always, this is Ether Dragon, and hope to see you all next time. Bye.